The participants in the scheme are bound together by the following relationships and transactions. The payer completes and forwards the transfer order. The order is submitted by any means agreed between the payer and the payer's bank. 2 in figure SEPA credit transfer. The payer's bank receives and verifies that it has sufficient information to execute a payment instruction and that the instruction fulfills the conditions required, including the authenticity of the instruction, the format and plausibility of the BIC and IBAN. The payer's bank debits the account of the payer. In accordance with the rules of the scheme, this is followed by the sending of the credit transfer instruction to ensure receipt by the payee bank via the selected clearing and settlement mechanisms, or CSM. 3 and 4 in the figure SEPA credit transfer. The payee bank credits the account of the payee. The beneficiary bank makes the information available to the beneficiary on the basis agreed between the beneficiary and the beneficiary bank. 5 in the figure SEPA credit transfer.
An SEPA direct debit, or SDD, is a payment instrument for making collections in euro throughout the SEPA region from accounts designated to accept collections. The debtor and creditor must each hold an account with a bank located within SEPA. Transactions for the collection of funds from a debtor's account with a debtor bank are initiated by a creditor via the creditor bank following an agreement between debtor and creditor. This is based on an authorization for the creditor and the debtor bank given by the debtor for the debit of its account. This authorization is referred to as the mandate. Unless the creditor and the debtor or payer have arranged a shorter period, a pre-notification must be sent at least 14 calendar days before the due date. In the case of recurring direct debits of the same amount, such as rent or insurance premiums, the payer need only be notified of a direct debit payment once, with details of all due dates. The objective is to provide fully electronic end-to-end straight-through processing or SDP of transactions. This also applies to the various processes for exception handling, such as rejects, returns, reversals, refunds, refusals, and revocations. Between banks, the handling of mandate information is only permitted electronically. Between debtor and creditor, a mandate can be exchanged in either paper or electronic form.
The mandate document contains field identifiers, followed by the blank space necessary to fill in the required data items. The field identifiers must be in at least one of the languages of the country of residence of the debtor. If the creditor is unable to determine with reasonable certainty the language of the debtor in advance of creating the mandate document, the field identifiers are also displayed in English. A sample mandate document is provided in the figure sample mandate. The mandate document must include the following fields: the main SAPA relevant activities in the SAP ERP application are as follows: update master data, adapt data media for new formats, activate mandate management.
Most of the settings for the payment program can be accessed directly through the user side of the application. The settings are divided into categories as displayed in figure Configure Payment Program. The main payment program configuration menu has push buttons for each area. To ensure the configuration is complete, work from top to bottom through each push button. The first three areas require few configuration changes. The standard system contains many payment methods for each country and their corresponding forms. For all company codes, you need to define the following parameters. For each paying company code, you need to define the following settings: minimum amounts for payments, forms for payment advice and EDI, bills of exchange specification.
Payment methods have two components: country-specific settings and company code-specific settings. For each country, you need to define the valid methods of payment, such as check or bank transfer.
The following table summarizes the company code specific parameters that you are required to specify for each payment method.
When selecting the paying house bank, you are required to take the following components into consideration.
Here is an overview of the ranking order file folder.
Here is an overview of the amounts and accounts file folders. Here is an overview of the value date file folder.
Here is an overview of the expenses or charges file folder.
The payment run parameters determine the accounts and documents that are included in the payment run. You are required to set these parameters before starting the payment process. You define the following parameters for the payment run: run date, program identification to differentiate between program runs on the same run date, posting date of the payment documents, entry date up to which invoices are to be selected, relevant company codes, relevant payment methods, next date of payment run, relevant customer and vendor accounts, which is optional, additional freely selectable criteria based on invoice document or master record, which is optional, exchange rate type, which is optional.
The system selects the appropriate invoices or open items to be paid based on the following parameters: which invoices or open items are to be paid. All documents entered up to the docs entered up to date are included in the payment run. Docs entered up to field automatically default to the same as the run date. The posting date is the date when the general ledger is updated with the postings. The posting date field too automatically default the same as the run date. It is possible to change the posting date and docs entered up with fields to allow posting in future, especially if the payments are not posted daily. Which are the company codes that will be included in the payment run? The company codes included in a payment run must be in the same country. If multiple country codes are listed, separate them with commas. If you want to specify a range of company codes, enter the first and last company code in the range in parentheses. Do not enter a space after the comma. Which payment methods? You need to define which payment methods can be used in each country. Choose the payment methods you want to use in the current payment run from the available methods. Note, remember that if you use more than one payment method in the payment run, the order you enter the payment methods is important. The method entered first has first priority, the next method you entered has second priority, and so on. The system makes the payment using the highest priority possible after the check. Once you have entered the payment run parameters, you are required to schedule the proposal run. The following activities take place in the proposal run. The invoices or open items to be paid are selected based on the payment run parameters entered. The system groups the invoices or open items into payments and assigns the payment methods and bank details to be used. If the system cannot find a valid payment method or valid bank details, it adds these items to the exception list. The system generates the proposal and exception lists, which can be printed or reviewed. The proposal list shows the business partners, that is customers and vendors, and the amounts each owes or is owed. Depending on the line layout you choose, the associated document numbers and cash discounts can be displayed. Any exceptions are also listed here. You can drill down to view and change the details of the individual payment items. The exception list displays the invoices that match the specified payment parameters but cannot be paid for some reason. To find out why the invoice or item cannot be paid, you can check the additional log.
There are several ways to set a payment block. A payment run can make a payment even when the account has a debit balance. An example of such a payment is given in figure debit balance check balance. A vendor account contains an invoice for 98 and a credit memo for 100. The invoice item contains a payment method for outgoing payments. However, a payment method has not been defined for incoming payments in the master record or in the credit memo. As the payment cannot be made without a suitable payment method, the credit memo for 100 is entered in the exception list during the payment proposal. As the item contains the payment method, the invoice for 98 is paid. Previously, as payments to persons who owe your company money had to be blocked manually, the system could not handle payments automatically. When the debit balance check is carried out after you create a payment proposal, the check offsets all due debit items without an incoming payment method against the proposed payments. If the resulting debit or credit balance is less than the minimum payment amount, the system adds the payments to the exception list and places the account on a list of blocked accounts. The debit balance check program places those accounts which have a debit or credit balance less than the minimum payment amount on a list of blocked accounts. Further, the payments for the blocked accounts are not made in the subsequent update payment run with the same payment run identification. Therefore, the blocks can be removed by creating a renewed payment proposal, or the blocks accounts can be released manually. The debit balance check is carried out with program RFF110SSP.
When you run the debit balance check after the payment proposal run, the system automatically blocks all the debit balances not included in